And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL Network.
It's Saturday night somewhere. Welcome into Tapped Out here on the BetQL Network. Produced by Jake Noaker with my co-host Brendan Tobin. You know me. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. All right, guys. Let's talk a little bit of fighting here for the next couple hours, and let's try to make a little bit of money along the way. Speaking of money, Terrence Crawford wins again. It looked pretty smooth last Saturday night. It was easy money, although you had to pay a lot to bet on Terrence Crawford. What did you think about his performance last Saturday night? And at this point, can we just say, just hope, pray that at some point he fights Canelo like in the next calendar year?
I don't know. There's been a lot of drama with Canelo, a lot of fun stuff with Canelo this week, and because it coincided with Terrence Crawford's win against Madrimov, that Canelo had his launch press against Edgar Berlanga this week, and so Canelo's kind of gotten his shot at the microphone, and you know, he's said what he said. Like, he's not against doing it, but the money's got to be right. And apparently this Turki Al-Sheikh, who, man, I mean, they made the whole broadcast about last week. I mean, I'm all for bringing new people into boxing and having some fun, but they, like, sent him into the Nevada Hall of Fame. I'm like, this guy's been around boxing for 3 seconds. We're putting him in the Boxing Hall of Fame? This is crazy. And he lashed out this week at Canelo because he was like, Canelo better consider my deal. And then all of a sudden – Canelo's like, I'm not doing business the way you want me to do business. And so then he is taking away the Terrence Crawford fight now. He has decided no Terrence Crawford fight. So that's where we're at. So I don't know. I don't really feel like the stars after this week are aligned for that. Maybe we'll be different after Canelo's next fight if he has a great performance against Edgar Berlanga, which, by the way, they had a hell of a launch press conference this week, and they were very personal with each other. God, Canelo is, I'm going to say this, Sean, English-speaking Canelo, better bleep talker than Conor McGregor. He's good.
What?
He's good, dude.
What are you talking
He is
about?
good. He's hilarious.
I watched the back and forth you were talking about with Berlanga, and it was good because Berlanga's confident. He was going back and forth. And Canelo, oftentimes he just takes it because he knows that he's the better fighter. He knows that he's going to end up winning the fight. He was popping back.
He's like, it's going to take 20 of you. You hit like my son. You got a big problem. Then when he turned around, he mimed the spank him. He's gonna spank him.
That was
I
the
was
best
like,
part.
man, Canelo is fired up. So anyway, to get to the Terrence Crawford thing,
Yes.
It doesn't look like it's lining up great. I think Terrence Crawford looked good last week, not dominant. Definitely looked like a guy who had, been out of the ring for a year and had taken some time off, and it was going to take on a weird style opponent like Madrimov is with a ton of amateur experience. So it wasn't really set up for him, I think, to look great. That being said, he is the first guy to go the distance with Terrence Crawford in 8 years and 11 fights. So there's a tip of the cap there. I think the broadcast was way off. They had it a much closer fight than I did. I thought it was like 8-4 Terrence Crawford. They were talking draw. I thought that was wildly stupid. But, look, he didn't finish him. He didn't have the spectacular viral moment. So I think it was a pretty forgettable night for Terrence Crawford. And so I don't think it moved us anywhere closer than we were going into that fight night.
One of my favorite things about the UFC, mixed martial arts, but the UFC in particular, is oftentimes they make the fight we want to see. More often than not, they give us that fight. Now, sometimes we're begging for it, but that's the game. Boxing, that's what it's been. I've been watching boxing now for 30 damn years, and it's always been that way, where we usually don't get the fight that we want to see until 3 or 4 years later. So here we are again. It's always some weird politics. Here we are again with the Terrence Crawford and Canelo thing, which is the fight that everybody knows they need to make. Which fight? I'm trying to think. There's not a ton of super fights really out there. Maybe a couple of heavyweights of these guys at the end of their career. But that to me is the one to make. All right, let's go from boxers to guys that did box, Francis Ngannou, and now is going to step into the PFL cage against Renan Ferreira coming up October 19th. So we're talking about just a few months away. We've been having this conversation about Ngannou to the PFL. Now he's fighting some guy that it sounds like he's going to go in there and beat up. As long as we don't have a Kimbo Slice, Seth Petrozelli situation, it sounds like they're just throwing this guy into the wolves. So let Ngannou go out there, beat him up, knock him out, and then be the face of the PFL. So here we are in a couple of months because the PFL, honestly, they're in a kind of a weird spot. right?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this last week, where it was just like they needed him certainly back. They needed, well, not back. They needed him to make his debut. I just think that they're having a little bit of a tough time. Um, just finding their grip. Like I remember going to the press conference where they had like all their champs were going to fight the Bellator champs. And then I'm like, well, is this Bellator? Is this PFL? What the hell's going on? Bellator is kind of riding out the sunset. Henan Ferreira, he beat Bellator's heavyweight champion. He beat Ryan Bader, beat him bad. So, he's coming off one of the more notable wins of his career. He's 6'8". He's an absolute giant. So I'm sure it's gonna look cool in the posters. I'm sure it's gonna look fun in the lead up. I think we got to ask with Francis, like, has he fully recovered from the AJ thing, the tragedy that happened to his son? There's a lot of baggage, I guess, that he's having coming into his first MMA fight in over 2 years. I would assume that they don't want to put him in there with anybody that's going to knock him out because he's their cash cow. But MMA doesn't always work like that, man. I mean, you do have the Seth Petrozellis of the world. You do have Fedor losing for on affliction cards. Like, it happens.
GSP losing to Matt Serra. No, sometimes these crazy things do happen. Chris Cyborg's on that card, also against Larissa Pacheco again. That's coming up on October 19th. All right, let's get back in the UFC octagon. Here's a fun one. Benoit Saint Denis official against Renato Moicano coming up UFC Paris. You got an early lean in that one. I could go either way.
Yeah, I don't know what the early odds on it are. I would imagine that it being in France and Benoit still having like the hot name, even with his tough loss to Dustin Poirier, that Moicano would be the underdog. But I feel like Moicano's kind of like, he said, I think on Twitter this week, he says, I'm your best financial advisor. Just keep betting me as the dog. And I tend to agree with him. Like, he's had this career renaissance that's been really, really great. And, he's been tremendously valuable as a betting party. So, if you're telling me I get him as a dog this week, it's, I think Benoit Saint Denis still has a lot of talent. I know he's going to say going into this fight, hey, in the Dustin Poirier fight, I had staph, I was littered with antibiotics, all this stuff. That's fine. But, I think there's still a lot of questions. This guy is not necessarily, we still need to know, is this guy like a for real contender? He's about to find out, and we'll see if Moicano is too much for him. But Moicano is, as a dog, man, there's value there.
Oh yeah, they make me money Moicano is what they need to call him, because I've been riding that train now since he's got hot, making some good money Moicano money. They don't call you money for nothing, huh? That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, here on the BetQL Network. Some other fight announcements. Also Paris, Brendan Allen, Nasruddin Imavov. Brendan Allen's a weird fighter because it's when you watch him, he doesn't really have any holes. We brought him on the show. He's not the most exciting guy in the world, but dude, he's one hell of a fighter.
You're thinking of Arnold Allen. We didn't have Brendan Allen on.
Oh, yeah, no, we didn't have Brendan. Here we go again with my wrong.
This is going back to the Mickey Ward, Andre Ward thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right. Well, Jake, we scrapped that. No, that's on
that
you.
Being
your
said,
choice.
that being
you want to make me look like a dumbass
said,
or not on live radio? That's on you, Jake. Anyway, yes, Brendan Allen versus Nasruddin Imavov. Any relation to Arnold Allen? Save me here. Cousins?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Friends?
I'm sure back in the day. Okay. I'm sure there's some crossover between, the Louisiana to England ties. I'm sure it's close. There's got to be one there somewhere.
The Louisiana accent and the UK accent actually are very similar. All right, screw you guys. Brendan Allen and Nasruddin Imavov, who you like?
I like Brendan Allen. I mean, Brendan Allen has been on a tear, man. I mean, I think he's kind of the unspoken guy in this weight class. He's been really, really good. He's a dangerous submission artist, and it feels like, he gets there. His last fight against Chris Curtis was a split decision on the main event, but before that, I mean, it was 4 finishes in a row. So he's really dangerous to me. I like him, but if it was Arnold Allen, I would like him too. Just to let you know.
You're a jerk. You guys suck. Tapped out here on the BetQL Network, having some fun on a Saturday night. Jared Cannonier. It is Jared Cannonier, right? Not like John Cannonier, Jim Cannonier.
I don't think there is another Cannonier.
Okay, the Killer Gorilla. Jared Cannonier takes on Chao Barallo. That's the main event on August 24th. We don't bet against friend of the show, Killer Gorilla, do we?
Nah, he's too fun, man. It's too fun. Yeah, okay. That was a memorable interview, especially when you asked him about fighting an actual gorilla, which would be a terrible idea. But I couldn't say that I would look away if that actually did happen.
No, and he basically had the same reaction. He was like, a real gorilla? Although he wasn't completely against the idea. It sounded like if I paid him enough money, he'd be in for it. UFC 309. Every time I say his name, I'm kind of like, I wince when I say it. Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. I just hope Weidman comes in there, knocks him out, and retires at this point.
I'm not against that. Like, I'm not, totally off that base with you either. Like, I do feel like every time he fights, you're a little bit squeamish. You're thinking to yourself, all right, it was one of those where it's like, all right, is this going to go his way? He's just trying to go out on his own terms. I think that's what it is. At the Tavares fight, he very clearly wasn't all the way back. The Bruno Silva fight, he had the weird stuff with the eye poke. So I think he just wants some normalcy. I think he's just looking for the normal fight that will allow him to ride off into the sunset, and that'll be it. I don't think this is going to be a Tony Ferguson thing where he's going to take 9 losses in a row. I think Chris Weidman wants that, true send off. That's like, all right, I felt absolutely the best. This didn't go weird. There wasn't a penalty. Let's go in this direction. Let's finish this off.
Real quick, because you brought up El Kakui. So 8 losses in a row, half retired. What do you think it is that the promotion hasn't told him he's done compared to some other guys? Like, you think that it's the run that he went on, the fact that he got screwed, because it feels like there have been a lot of fighters where even if it's not public, they've stepped in and said, dude, we can't put you out there anymore. With Tony, we all see that except for Tony. It's like the Chuck Liddell is the best example. At some point, it's like, all right, dude, if you don't know what's for your own good, then it feels like he's got a similar relationship with the promotion. Is that it?
I don't know. I think that's one of those things where it's I'm sure because he was, one of those pandemic fighters, it does feel like those guys, get a little bit of a rub because he was in the kind of first wave of my fight got moved and then it got pushed back and I weighed in twice. So I do think that there is probably an appreciation from the organization for him. I think there's probably maybe a feeling of, hey, kind of got screwed out of some certain things. And it doesn't feel like it's always been peachy between the UFC and Tony Ferguson, but I do think that there's a lot of respect there for him and knowing that maybe he also just needs fighting. I think there's also an element of that with UFC. I think that sometimes they let guys continue to fight because they feel like they need it, not only just for a paycheck, but just from a mental standpoint. So I don't know what the right answers are. I just am kind of reaching out here and seeing where they could be, but yeah, I mean, he doesn't look anywhere close to being able to win a fight. Like, he shouldn't be fighting anymore.
The Octagon is heading back to Salt Lake City. You thought I was going to say Miami, didn't you? Heading back to Salt Lake City for 307. And that's coming up October 5th. What is the affinity? And I love Salt Lake City. The mountains are great. I like the people, the skiing. How come the Octagon keeps going there? Am I missing something here?
I think that's just that they get to these cities where they have deals with certain cities and they just like keep going back there. I think that's what that is. Like, once you're kind of in the tent, you're in the tent, and they keep bringing you back. So I think that's what that is.
Okay, I didn't know if that was like Mick Maynard's home city or something. I feel like I was missing something there. All right, then tonight, by the way, we do have fights. Who do you like in the big guys going at it? Sergey Spivak, a -150 favorite against Marcin Tybura, a +125. I'll tell you this much: somebody's getting their ass knocked out tonight in that
one. I'm gonna go with Spivak. I like the polar bear. I just like his vibe more than Tybura's. Like, these boys, that does feel like it could make for a pretty good fight, but it does feel like there are kind of like the other guys in the heavyweight division, and that's what they're there for. Normally they're just matched up against some kind of contender that's trying to get right. This time they're matching up in a rematch. So I'm going to go Spivak to right it from the last time that they fought.
I, as well, am a big fan of the polar bear. I'll take Spivak at -150. That's not paying too much for a favorite. Chepe Mariscal, -210. Speaking of favorites in the co-main event against Damon Jackson. And that one, I'm kind of looking at the underdog at +175. Where's your money going?
Oh, man. I'm going to go with Chepe. So I might have to parlay some things to make some dough tonight.
All right, those are some of the fights coming up. We're going to make some money on a bunch of those, I guarantee it. Coming up next, new friend of the show, where we're going to welcome on Anik Subramanian. If I screwed that up, Anik, sorry. we'll deal with it next. That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. Appreciate you checking us out on a Saturday night. It's Tapped Out right here on the BetQL Network.